Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about the food situation in China and the US. China is stockpiling food supplies in preparation for a famine, while the US is facing massive food shortages. What's going on? Is this the beginning of the end? I'm going to share with you what I know and what you can do to prepare for the worst. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. According to Bloomberg, Chinese authorities have purchased nearly 60% of the world's grains this year as they scramble to prepare for the coming famine. In the meantime, the United States is having difficulty locating alternate suppliers on the global market, and consumers are still experiencing shortages of a wide variety of everyday goods. Even though prices continue to surge to new heights, a new study says the American food system could implode like the banks in 2008, and the future is even more troubling. Today, we are going to discuss China's grain production, which appears to be pretty scary right now. Please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. According to new revealing reports, China, home to almost 20% of the world's population, has accumulated almost 60% of the world's grains. Global food prices have risen dramatically since January, and more nations have been pushed into famine. The Chinese government's panic buying spree food program, which started in January, has not slowed down in recent months, and now the United States Department of Agriculture has gotten involved. China is said to control 69% of the world's corn reserves, 60% of its rice, and 51% of its wheat, according to estimates. According to China's Customs Administration, the country has imported $98.1 billion worth of food since the beginning of the year, a whopping 4.6-fold increase. From January to September, China has imported more food than in any year since at least 2016, as far back as comparable data is available. China purchases agricultural land in other countries to ensure it has enough food to feed its large population, which has historically been a problem for the country. According to China experts Arthur Gordon Chang and Chang, the Chinese Communist Party's large agricultural purchases can only be described as what they are. According to experts, the current scramble for food can be partially explained by the country's draconian health policies. They will never admit to having hoarded food, of course. The Uyghur province has been especially affected by the hard lockdowns imposed by many provinces. Due to the stay-at-home mandates for weeks to curb the number of virus cases and other issues, lockdowns have prompted people to hoard, and it's not just in lockdown cities, according to Stanley Chow, author of Selling to China. Chinese citizens are hoarding because of lockdowns. Even in cities where lockdown has recently concluded or where lockdown is unlikely, Chow's contacts report that people are lining up at grocery stores to purchase everything from flour to meats and baby food. Those who can afford to use grocery delivery services are buying up to 6 weeks' worth of food, while others buy up frozen meats and vegetables to last 6 weeks without having to step outside to purchase food. According to Chow, people are not taking any chances because Chinese officials are telling people not to worry about facing the lockdowns, while at the same time seeing people survive on minimal rations or complain about little or no food for weeks. People are speculating that if a similar event occurred in the past, it will happen again. In addition, Usha Haley, an expert on China and food security, warns against hoarding food supplies. Food supplies were sparked by people observing other cities' food rationing. In addition, Chinese citizens know that their government will not provide them with information to improve their lives, enabling them to plan for daily necessities. To hide posts about local food shortages, the Chinese government censors were ordered to open a comment flooding campaign if the information provided evidence of failed policies. In the Ili Kazakh Autonomous Prefecture, China Digital Times published a leaked directive. The city has about 4.5 million residents and is thought to have been placed on lockdown in early August without an official public announcement after a new virus outbreak. There have been recent posts about food shortages, delays, and refusals of medical care, all of which are coming from alternative accounts. Have you ever heard of maintaining a shred of dignity, government? One Bebo user wondered. This is really happening during the yearly epidemic, and the locals have tried many things to let the outside world know about our circumstances here. We're locked in and don't have enough, said another. Even though they opened the tourist destinations, they still failed to help common citizens. Please help us here. The big irony is that while the government advises people not to make a mad rush for grocery stores, they have been stockpiling massive amounts of food and other commodities. According to a state-run economic daily report published in January, China's rice and wheat stockpiles could feed its population for almost 2 years. This leads us to wonder why the world's largest importer of food supplies in 2022 still faces food shortages. According to geopolitical strategists, China is keeping most of its imports and reserves in order to weaponize them as global conflicts continue to escalate. Even in the best of times, Chinese leaders who are deeply paranoid and insecure are said to maintain substantial grain reserves at the National Food and Strategic Reserves Administration. In addition to maintaining historically high strategic food stockpiles, China is buying up everything. According to experts, the United States cannot prevent the Chinese from buying everything up, but there is a possibility that the U.S. government might someday decide to block the export of agricultural products. In recent days, U.S. authorities have expressed their growing frustration with Chinese hoarding of commodities as they drain the global market. We would like to see China behave like the great power that it is and send more grain to poor people around the world. James O'Brien, head of the U.S. State Department's Office of Sanctions Coordinations, said that China has been buying a lot of grain, and that we are concerned that China is stockpiling grain at a time when hundreds of millions of people have been entering a phase of food insecurity and are facing acute shortages for months. According to O'Brien, 40% of grain shipments from Ukraine in April went to China alone. Chang also noted that before nations that had never faced difficulties ensuring international supplies were now struggling with each other to ensure their food supply. He believes that the next geopolitical conflicts may be fought over. China's stockpiling is still affecting food prices in the present, although that may be a worry for the future. Prices will go up, according to Chan. That will be immediate and enduring. The Chinese government, for its part, is accusing the United States of weaponizing food, since it is the United States that is weaponizing food and benefiting from the practice. The China Daily claims that whether the world can avert a food emergency next year depends on how cooperative the United States will be with the United Nations and other international groups. However, the World Food Program, the biggest provider of food aid, is the United States. American weaponizing food is pure nonsense. Western sanctions on Russian food exports are said to be responsible for the accusation. However, Russian grain and fertilizers were only temporarily subject to U.S. or European sanctions during April and May, when Western allies barred Russian ships from their ports. There are concerns that U.S. sanctions were largely symbolic, as Russian vessels transported less than 1% of the goods entering American ports, besides the ban on energy exports. As European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen points out, Russia and China are the real food weaponizers, and populations will be forced to pay the price, as food exports are not restricted at present. According to her, this is a callous and calculated siege by Putin on some of the world's most vulnerable people. Food has become scarce. The China Daily's spin on Western sanctions is in line with Kremlin disinformation, which has tried to distract people from the casting of a conflict that has victimized tens of thousands and caused ripple effects around the world. That report, which was published by Maplecraft Risk Consultancy, indicates that China has diversified its supply of critical natural resources in order to weaponize trade against its geopolitical rivals. China's high reliance on foreign natural resources if its soft underbelly is concerned. In order to diversify the country's import sources, China has been buying stakes in foreign firms. By doing so, the country will increase its reliance on Chinese-owned resources and total imports. China wishes to gain global supply control via overseas investments and alliances with international firms, according to the report. State-owned Chinese companies are being assisted to go global and gain control of overseas resource bases as a result. China's pivot towards authoritarian regimes as of the late 1990s has been a significant threat to its supply lines, but also an important diplomatic resource, our data shows. The United States is losing out as China increases its economic dependency on new and existing trade partners while weaponizing trade with China's geopolitical rivals. According to new data, the United States is losing out as China continues to seize a large share of food products from international suppliers. In the most recent month, China purchased 1.084 million tons of corn, a 50% increase from a year ago. That number was estimated based on United States corn imports. At a mere 57.8 million tons of corn were consumed in the year. Consumers in the United States are already being affected by extensive corn shortages. According to Arizona farmer John Post, the entire U.S. food supply chain is being jeopardized because corn is utilized in producing fertilizers, livestock feed, and a variety of foods we regularly consume. In addition, nearly 40% of the U.S. corn crop now goes to ethanol, thereby intensifying pricing pressures when the market is near. In addition to being a major corn exporter, the United States is forced to send a large percentage of its corn production overseas because of long-term contracts with other countries. We foresee prices rising by 10 to 20% this year, and we believe the corn shortage will persist through 2023. In the interim, consumers are observing vacant shelves and extended dearth of fundamental necessities that are different from China. U.S. social media is loaded with pictures of supermarket aisles and notices about the lack of accessible food and other products. Aldi, Target, Costco, and Walmart, for example, have apologized to customers for the shortage. According to SupermarketGuru.com editor Phil Lear, we are currently experiencing the perfect storm we have been warned about. We have become reliant on a just-in-time supply chain, and I believe that things are now going awry with tomatoes, tampons, product stockouts, and grocery stores threatening to ruin the holiday season. According to The Guardian's recent report, the American food system is teetering on the brink of collapse, and things are only going to get worse. The food industry is becoming more and more connected to the financial sector. Cascading failure is a situation where a system's network density increases, making it more susceptible to failure. According to George Monio, the creator of the text, 4 corporations account for nearly 40% of the global grain trade. Because corporations begin using similar methods and pursue similar revenue streams, their businesses will appear increasingly identical, increasing the risk of a global food system dominated by a single shark. Unforeseen financial or meteorological events may destroy, not one, but all of their organizations, leaving a gaping hole in the market for necessary items. Furthermore, 4 organizations alone account for 84% of beef cattle slaughtered in the meat industry. Those organizations are JBS USA, Tyson Foods, and Cargill National Beef Packing. Our meat food supply chain is becoming increasingly vulnerable and at risk of shortages and failures than ever before as big corporations continue to push out small meat producers. In fact, more than 100,000 independent farms and ranches in America have been shut down in the last decade. According to Time, Al Davis, a Nebraska cattle producer and former state senator, emphasized the significance of preserving farm and ranch families in order to prevent the extinction of our food system. If we lose that rural lifestyle, we will have lost a big part of what made this country great. We are witnessing or experiencing shortages of supplies because of sharks from both the internal and external sides of our food system. What would happen if the beef industry experienced the same sort of collapse as the 2008 financial crisis? Would you be able to find enough of it, or would you be able to purchase it in stores? With 100 million more people starving across the world than 5 years ago, according to the United Nations, the concern is that we might see the same sort of thing happen in the beef industry. Experts are urging people to prepare for the coming global famine. John LeBlanc of Cedarville University offers advice on practical ways to prepare. People should do 2 things, according to LeBlanc. They should stockpile non-perishable foods, canned goods, package deals, and other items they can put in the freezer, among other things. The United States has 13 million children who are currently experiencing hunger, and as food prices rise and gas prices increase, the situation will worsen. All things considered, the situation looks as if it will worsen even more in the future. Certain societal upheavals have been triggered by food shortages. As we face food uncertainty because of problems such as our strained relations with other major economic powers, the possibility of catastrophe is real and the consequences severe. It will be catastrophic for all of us if we don't watch. If you want to ensure your family and loved ones are prepared for whatever is to come, take a look at the 25 essential DIY projects for self-sufficient living I have linked in the description below. You can learn things like how to freely pump gallons of water around your home without electricity, how to feed your family with 4 different low-space food projects, and how to make a food stockpile that never spoils. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.